Hello, this is Rachel, founder and presenter of the Multidimensional show. We're pleased to announce our next conference on Saturday, the 18th of May, where we have 4 amazing speakers coming to talk to us about the nature of reality. From the dawn of conscious awareness, humankind has pondered who they are and how reality is formed. From solipsism to the holographic universe, philosophies abound on this topic, demonstrating the thirst for greater understanding. We will be exploring this timeless and fascinating subject with lectures from cutting-edge researchers and authors, covering subjects including simulation theory, origins of humanity, higher dimensions, consciousness, and a host of paranormal experiences. Sit back and enjoy this short panel interview with our 4 amazing speakers.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
We've got 4 wonderful speakers coming along who've joined us today kindly to say hello and have a bit of a chat. The first of which is Guy Needler. I'm just going to find him sitting there. Yeah, Guy Needler is an engineer with a non-academic look on the human journey of evolution. And his talk on the day is entitled The Road to Sentience and the Greater Reality. In his lecture, he will describe that consciousness is a milestone on the road to sentience and that reality is a function of a greater amorphous event space structure that has intelligence. Hi, Guy.
Good evening to you, sirs. Good evening to you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. And just to let the people who are listening to for the first time to me via this particular medium, through the Multidimensional show, know that I've written 7 books. There's a 6th that are actually being published. The 7th about to be published this year, and I'm working on an 8th. And most of what I deal with is actually multidimensional, as it happens. So it's quite relevant to be part of this particular conference this year, and to be able to discuss the content of the lecture that I'm going to give, which actually was created just for this particular seminar. So
Cool.
This will be a first time it's being broadcast.
Excellent.
Wow, I'm very excited to hear more.
Yeah, I'm reading through your book, The History of God, at the moment, so I'm looking forward to seeing you come and speak. It'd be very cool to see you in person.
So we also have Luke Scott, who's an international speaker, television host and spiritual mentor. And Luke will be talking about the simulation theory, if it's fact or fiction.
Mm-hmm.
So are we real? Do we actually exist? Or are we just living in a life-like simulation? What would be the implications if simulation theory was in fact truth? Wow, that sounds fascinating.
It does. Hi, Luke.
Hi, yes, it is super juicy, and the implications of it are massive, whether you believe in it or not. Like, even just opening yourself up to it creates a whole realm of different possibilities. And I'm someone who, for the first 27 years of my life, I was very physically based. I was physics, logic, didn't believe in energy, God, angels, any of that stuff. Thought it was all craziness.
Yeah.
And had a huge awakening experience where I managed to experience what it's like to be multidimensional. And then I went on this quest to just try everything. And the more and more stuff I try, the more I'm convinced that there is just so much more than we are being told. And I can't wait to go deep into that at the talk and really look at it from a very scientific side, but I'm going to bring in some stuff that most people have probably never even heard of before as well.
Oh, cool.
Just ask people to come with an open mind. I'm sure you're all quite open already. So I hope our guests are getting their minds blown.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think it will be well received.
Yes, I think you'll have the right audience.
Yeah.
Our next speaker is Anthony Peake, who is an author and broadcaster, and his talk is called The Huxleyan Spectrum. Anthony will be discussing his model, the Huxleyan Spectrum, as described in his book, Opening the Doors of Perception. This is a radically new explanation of what is taking place during alien abductions, near-death experiences, and out-of-body experiences. So, hello, Anthony. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, delightful to be here. That's really good. I think you'll find that my approach to these things tends to be rigidly scientific, in the sense that if you read my books, you will discover the fact that I reference every single thing that I talk about, back to academic papers, back to actually initial academic papers. This is because I want my readers to make up their own decisions as to whether my conclusions are valid or not. Thus far, my publishers have now sold somewhere in the region of 100,000 copies of my books worldwide. My books are in every major European language, and indeed minor European languages, including languages such as Croatian and Polish. My position is always extraordinary claims need extraordinary proofs, and that's exactly what I supply. I think there's nothing more fun I have than actually taking on in public debate advocates of scientism and people who are in denial of extraordinary human experiences, because to me the most important thing is actually attempting to explain how inanimate matter inside my head can create a conscious sentient being. Because modern science has not the slightest example of understanding how this will be. In my talk, I will discuss in great detail what I call my Huxleyan spectrum, which is effectively an analysis of what happens neurologically in the brain when people have extraordinary experiences. So I'll be discussing things from schizophrenia, temporal lobe epilepsy, classical autism, Alzheimer's disease, and various other areas. I'll also be touching upon material from my new book, which will be in the bookshops in December, which is called The Hidden Universe, and this will be my take on alien abductions and such like, and non-human entities. And the approach I'm going to be taking is going to be fairly radical in terms of this, because I'm even going into the mathematical structures of exactly what we mean. And it's something that Luke was talking about earlier on, is the simulation argument. And it's one of the areas I'll be discussing in some detail from my particular viewpoint, which is doing the real pure physics from the works of people like Juan Maldacana, the idea that that it can be explained by something called Hawking radiation and various other things. But I do attempt to try and be as straightforward as I can in terms of my hypothesis. So I think as a Venn diagram, it seems like our experiential areas of the speakers is going to be really quite interesting and quite dynamic. Just the other thing, can I very much quickly also say that in April, if you go onto my website, I'm going to be doing an absolutely mind-blowing event on the 24th of April in Kidderminster. We're going to the Drakelow Caves, and we're going to be doing a unique experiment. We're going to have Lucia light devices with us. We're going to have Geisen light machines. We've got Professor David Luke with us. We're going to be using virtual reality headsets, ambient music, the whole thing, to actually bring about altered states of consciousness. And I don't know if you know the Drakelow Caves, but they are weird beyond weird. There's 5 miles of them underneath the hill, just outside Kidderminster. Oh, uncanny. Check them out. This is going to be huge. We've already got the New York Times interested in coming along. It's getting that big. But just check my website about this, because this is going to be absolutely huge.
Okay. Can we come along?
Yes.
Yeah, there's no reason why not. I mean, I'd need to actually facilitate that with the organisers because of the way the dynamic's going to work. But maybe we can talk off camera in terms of involved in some way or another.
That would be awesome.
Wow, amazing.
Okay, that's you.
Well, next up we also have Michael Feeley, who's an author and ancient codebreaker, and he'll be talking about In This World of Many Possible Worlds. And during his talk, Michael is going to reveal some of the biggest deceptions of our time, how the sacred texts and ancient monuments around the world are all connected by a singular message of human consciousness. So, hi Michael.
Hello Michael.
Hello, good evening everyone. It's a very, very interesting lineup. Nice to be a part of it. Yes, so my talk is in this world of many possible worlds. It basically goes into the question of what is reality, what is real, and if what is real to me is different to what is real to you, then do we not live in alternative realities? And what happens when fictions have been created to conceal fact? And my sort of talk goes into deeply into all of these systems of fiction that have been created to deliberately create a false reality for the people of the world. Now, my background was 17 years in law enforcement, so I have a very sort of investigative mind, 17 years of investigating crime, piecing together evidence. And what I've found is an ancient code that connects the whole of the ancient cultures, from the heads of Easter Island to Stonehenge to the pyramids around the world, to the Bible, to the real esoteric deeper meanings of all these things, to a mathematical proof that these sacred monuments of Earth are actually connected to other planets such as Mars and the Moon, with mathematical proof of how there was a mathematical sat-nav created in order to locate these other monuments on different planets. So the talk really sort of goes deep into who were the likes of these biblical characters? Who were they really? What is being concealed from us? What was the real purpose of the likes of the pyramids of Egypt, which is all to do with consciousness, which is all to do with altered state of awareness and altered state of consciousness, how they achieved it through frequencies, how that's all connected to all the other ancient monuments around the world, and basically what is this false reality that's been created for us, that is taken us off the real esoteric truth that has been deliberately concealed for many thousands of years. So it's sort of seemingly many different subjects, but really it's all connected to one pinnacle point, which is the message of the ancient code that I found.
Yeah, huge topic.
Yeah,
We're in for a treat, aren't we?
we are. Yeah. So the big questions from the day, as we've kind of covered already, that are going to be under examination are: what is the nature of our reality? How did it come into being? What is the basis of our reality, and how is it structured? So I think we're going to have some very interesting perspectives and opinions put forward on the day, which I'm very much looking forward to.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I think underpinning all of what you're all saying is that actually reality is not quite what it seems, that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. And Luke, you're taking quite a slightly different perspective, that it's simulation, that it's kind of constructed. The rest of you are taking the view that I guess it's more about consciousness and the play of the mind behind our reality. Would that be fair to say? Who wants to start on that?
I think that would be fair to say. My reality is a history of visitations, a history of being given sacred knowledge that lots of other people have not been given, and that really is my reality. My belief is that we are part of many possible realities. You know, we live on a world of many possible worlds, and if we see less than 1% of the frequency spectra, and the only visible thing that we can see is visible light, what is happening in the 99+% that we ordinarily can't see? I've seen all kinds of things that you would class as paranormal. I've seen all kinds of things that you would class as supernatural, but to me, that is normality. That is my reality. And I've received many visitations. I've received many sort of sacred messages. I've received many sort of bits of sacred information that has come to me, and that to me is what has formed my reality. And that in 2009, following an absolute massive awakening, being taken back 159 years in history to Victorian England, that to me sort of has forged my new reality. Now that to me is what is real.
Wow.
Yeah. And Guy, actually, you've channeled your information as well, haven't you? This has come as downloads for you, hasn't it? So that's interesting.
Yes, I mean,
Guy, can you hear us? Yeah.
What my understanding is that the reality is form part of something which are created individually or locally or collectively or group-based reality or universal reality, even other spaces which are within the overall space for choices, our decisions, our desires, and which way we want to go. You know, we don't, in my understanding, space or reality. We exist in many at the same time. It's just that what we think of it as our being our main reality is just what this part of us is just focused on right now. There's many other parts of us which are focused on these other potentials, and the potentials of potentials, or the possibility of possible possibilities of potentials, and and it fractalizes exponentially to us experiencing multiple things concurrently, based upon the variations of possibility that we could have actually experienced. And these different realities they're localized to ourselves, or they can be multiversalized as well. And it's amazing how you can experience these things. And the idea that we only experience less than 1% of the overall reality is actually, I think, is an exaggeration. I mean, there's nothing wrong with what the previous speaker just said. We experience significantly less than 1%. I mean, if we experience a billionth of 1%, that's the maximum we can ever experience, because the different realities that are there. So if we try to humanize it in figures, we can't really, because we don't really have the capacity to understand what we experience when we're not in the human condition.
Yeah.
And so we've all got the right idea and we've all got the right direction of thought process, but the depth of it, even though we think that we've reached a depth, is unfathomable, really, because we just don't have the capacity in our current state of beingness to understand it in its totality.
Yeah.
It's interesting though that during altered states of awareness through meditation and stuff, that it is possible to tap into, if only temporarily, some of these kind of higher or more encompassing states and communicate with source, as you say you do in your books. So we're not kind of cut off from it, which is something that fascinates me. But it's just that we're not normally aware of what's around us. But we do have the tools that we can use to tap into and communicate with and experience these other realities or higher states. Yeah,
that's right. And we've always got the ability to do it. It's just we've forgotten because of the bandwidth that we've got now in our incarnate state. It's so drastically reduced compared to what it normally is. It's like comparing, us being able to access all of the internet instantaneously, but our ability right now is worse than the old dial-up method of communicating by a computer. It's just amazing how we don't really understand who and what we are because of our frequential state right now. And what I've discovered through my own experiments in consciousness and projecting my sentience into different parts of the multiverse and teaching others is that anybody can do it, provided they've got the tools to do it. And so all we need to do is just be able to focus on meditating or concentrating in certain ways, concentrating our sentience in certain ways. And we can achieve connectivity with all these different environments and the other entities and beings that are within those environments as well.
That's cool.
Yeah, and Anthony, you talk about this as well, don't you? That you can access altered states. You talk about different sort of neurological states that allow us to see beyond the doors of perception.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm not an experiencer of any shape or form. Extraordinary experiences pass me by. I've had one or two what I would consider unusual experiences, but I very much come from the analytical point of view of what is taking place in the brain when people have extraordinary experiences. For instance, is it neurological? Is it to do certain release of certain neurotransmitters in the brain? And what I do is I do the neurochemistry and present an argument that the pineal gland itself synthesizes endogenous, that is internally generated dimethyltryptamine from melatonin within the pineal gland. And under certain circumstances, this can facilitate altered states of consciousness in people, which can break open the doors of perception so people will see and perceive alternate realities. My question then is, what is the nature of these alternate realities that we perceive? Are they real? Are they hallucinations? Indeed, when we use the term hallucination, exactly what do we mean? Because reality itself could be argued is an ongoing hallucination we haven't woken up from yet. Because different people have false awakenings and everything else that these take place. So for me, my position is I'm looking for a model that I can take to the Richard Dawkins of this world. And they can't diss it. They can't dismiss it because I'm talking their language. And I think that's profoundly important. And I think what is also important is the experiences that the other guys have had here are intensely personal experiences that are powerful as well. And it's understanding and listening to this as well that is of importance, because there's validity. As I've said many ways, there are many paths to the top of the mountain, but the view from the top is still the same. It's just that we have different ways of getting there and different ways of experiencing it. So I think that's my position. For instance, Luke's position on the simulation argument, this is something that I'm absolutely fascinated in. And I'm really doing the science and talking with some of the world's leaders in this field who are doing the research into the idea that this is a simulation. People like Nick Bostrom and individuals like that. This clearly is what is taking place. The question is proving it, or indeed, are we allowed to prove it? Because are there things that we shouldn't do? We're not going to be allowed to break through. It's like becoming sentient within a program. But that's the issues I'll be discussing.
In my understanding, what you were talking about there is really providing evidence, scientific evidence, for that which is at the moment classified as being unscientific. although scientists do work on what they call gut feeling and hunches, and they allow that to happen, but they don't accept metaphysics to be accepted, which I find a bit bizarre.
Some of them are. It is simply a matter of knowing who they are. Anton Zeilinger, for instance, of the University of Austria. You know, there are guys that are doing this. As they say, new ideas come as the old guard die. And that's what's taking place now. The guys are disappearing, but the new guys have got some fantastic ideas. Black Coverdrell is somebody you need to read. Professor of quantum physics at the University of Singapore. His articles and books on digital consciousness are phenomenal and absolutely brilliantly written.
Yeah, Tom Campbell's good as well. I mean, I've talked at length with Tom Campbell, and his idea about things being at a quantum level and understandable from a quantum level. And his books, the My Big Toe books, are fantastic in terms of understanding from a scientific perspective. And I think that what we're talking about now is like tomorrow's physics, like metaphysics. If you look at the history, metaphysics. One day, the metaphysics of today ends up being tomorrow's physics, tomorrow's science, and it needs people who are looking at it from a scientific perspective and pinning it down in an absolute way, which is understandable and quantifiable and justifiable, is absolutely necessary, because without that, we don't make the jump between metaphysics and physics. And that's, and for me, that's the work that you're doing is of significant importance, and will provide that bridge between metaphysics today being tomorrow's physics, and then the metaphysics of tomorrow's tomorrow being the physics of tomorrow's tomorrow, so to speak.
Yeah. Sorry. I was just going to say, Anthony, I love what you're doing actually, because I don't think there's necessarily any such thing as supernatural. I think there is just layers of natural that we haven't tapped into yet, or kind of explored or understood, and therefore anything that is experienced which we think is metaphysical can in some way be explained using science. Maybe not today's laws of science, maybe tomorrow's, but it's not like we have the natural world and then we have the world of ETs and ghosts and extrasensory perception. I think that the two are very much the same thing. It's just that you have to look at it from a different perspective and
it's the equipment that we have, isn't it?
It is
access to the resources and the materials and the equipment to actually measure these.
Well, I genuinely believe that we can approach these issues using modern science, and we can approach it using, I don't want to be divisive here, but their science. I use their science to prove what they are refusing to look at. I think that's profoundly important. As I say, I go back to the source papers. I've been reading academic papers today by Max Tegmark in terms of the mathematical structure of the universe. And this is intriguing stuff, really, really intriguing. But enough of me.
You're very quiet, Luke.
Yeah, Luke. Yes, I was going to say the simulation theory idea. It's fascinating. The idea that, from what I understand, that there's that technology is rapidly advancing, and based on just seeing the advancement of technology, it's plausible that we are in a simulating reality, that computer technology has got so advanced that it's able to replicate all that we see and experience in our world. Is that kind of the angle that you're taking, Luke?
Yeah, I am so excited for this event now after hearing all of you speak. This is going to be so good, because I'm coming at it from my very real personal experiences and then I've gone and searched for the answers, and it sounds like you've all done the science, or a lot more science even than I've done, and it's just going to be such a privilege to get to spend time with all of you as well, and I can't wait. For me, science is really interesting. I love physics, I love quantum mechanics, I love to go deep into this stuff, but what I've done and my take on this is I had an experience, and then I found a way to replicate that experience so that it's provable. So I can now take people through the same process that I've been, and this is what my book's about, how to find your truth that's coming out. I'm just putting the final chapter to it now. It's to take people through this process, so you don't have to know exactly how everything works, and maybe one of the guys in this call does know everything to explain it, which sounds brilliant, but I can get people to experience what it would be like if this was a simulation, and I can get them to do things that would be classed as sci-fi by a lot of people. And then I go away and I try and find the science to back it up, and I think the amount of information we have now is just incredible. But you said something really interesting before. And there's a quote by Friedrich Nietzsche, which is that there is your way and there's my way, there's no the way. And the way I take this is that there's your truth and there's my truth, there's no the truth, and everyone here has their own truth. And I think it's so cool when we all come together and are brave enough to share our version of what this reality is.
Yeah.
Because in the past, in my previous experiences, because one of the processes I do with people is energy can never be created or destroyed, it can only be transferred. That's the law of conservation of energy. So I can take people back and follow their energy thread to have previous experiences of different, what I call simulations. And I've seen different simulations where I've been persecuted for saying these things. Us having this webinar a few hundred years ago, we would have all been killed as witches or something, right? This would just not have been allowed. But now in this version of this reality we're in, we can have these conversations. And it's just so exciting. And I'm going to do a process with the people at the event to open them up and just allow them to experience it. I think when you learn something, it's one level. When you understand it, it's another. But when you have direct experience of something that is way out of your current viewpoint of the world, it just changes you internally. You get this DNA shift.
Yeah.
And this is what I want everyone to experience.
I love that. I love
It
that
does.
idea of experiencing. That's definitely something that's core
Yes.
to us, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, and we can attest to that from personal experience as well on some other subjects about, it's one thing to intellectualize, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm saying it's good to understand something, but from your perspective, once you've experienced something, there's kind of a knowing involved as well, which is important on an individual level, I think.
Yeah.
And without going into rapturous detail, it's something that we often come across with the contact work that we do, because you can show people videos and pictures and explain the concepts of how it works to them, but until you've been out and done it and you've had that kind of paradigm shift experience, it doesn't change you in the way that it does when you experience it. So so I think it's important. Personal experience is something that is very powerful.
It's
and
tangible, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. And I love working with super logic-minded people who've never had an experience like this before. And so far it works every single time. So it's such a blessing to be able to, and you talked about channeling. So when I'm on stage or when I'm doing a process with someone, it's not me. It's something much greater than me that does the magic. And it's just such a privilege to be able to tap into whatever that larger part of us all is.
The daemon.
Fantastic.
Yes. The daemon.
Yes. Well, we're coming up to time. That's gone by very quickly.
I think we are, unfortunately.
It's now 6:30. So, yes, I just want to say a big thank you to you all, Guy, Anthony, Michael, Luke.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been fascinating talking to you.
We were excited about the show anyway, but I think we're even more excited now, having heard you have a bit of a discussion between yourselves. I think, we're going to have to go for a meal afterwards, I think.
Yes.
get everyone talking over a curry or something.
Yeah.
I'm excited to get in the green room with you all and just talk and just go deep. I might change my whole talk just in the time we're backstage.
Excellent.
We all do that. We all do that.
Well, thank you very much, guys. It's been a pleasure having everyone on. Thank you for taking the time tonight.
Thank you. See you. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye, Michael.
Oh, yeah.
Take care.
Bye-bye.